Lisa Sofia Hilton es la autora de esta novela que yo leí este fin de semana, que es Maestra. This is your first
my first contemporary novel, yes.
Yeah. What do you think when they compare this to 50 Shades of Grey?
I think the 50 Shades is basically a love story.
It has nothing to do with 50 Shades.
It doesn't. It's a sexy book, and the heroine likes sex.
And it's just about sex. There's nothing of love in there. I mean, she just likes sex. You had to do a research, I guess, because I was asking you, these places really exist?
And I went to a very famous and exclusive and indeed expensive sex club in Paris.
Yeah, you said like 1,000 euros.
Oh, it's very expensive. And I was very surprised.
What's the name of this
I
book?
Can't say the name.
I can't say.
I might want to go back, you know.
But we also want to go just to know what it looks like. You were just there once?
I just went the once, yes.
Really?
Yes, it was quite a comprehensive evening.
No hay mujer más odiada en este país que usted.
No es cierto.
Hola, me llamo Malala.
Hello, Rachel. How are you? Buenas tardes. ¿Ya no quieres insultar a la prensa, sí o no?
Una parte.
¿Sí te gustaría ser presidente?
Por Dios santo, Adela. Entonces, ¿en qué estamos,
No,
hombre?
Chabelo, eres una celebridad de Hollywood.
Sí, ¿qué?
¿Qué sientes? ¿Qué? Tú eres bastante neurótico.
¿Por qué lo dices?
I adore you. I'm your fan.
Can we get some wine?
O sea, ¿no mandó a nadie al diablo en algún momento?
Muchas ganas.
Yes, I'm demon with horn.
Me están albureando.
Oh my God.
Dangerous woman. Cheers.
Pon fecha y hora.
Por Adela.
Bueno, pues a mí me da un enorme gusto recibir esta noche a Lisa Sofia Hilton. Es la autora de esta novela que yo leí este fin de semana, que es Maestra. Y la disfruté enormemente, me entretuvo muchísimo. Lisa es inglesa, vive en Inglaterra, vive en Londres. Lisa, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Have you enjoyed your stay here in Mexico?
I'm so excited to be here in Mexico, except all I've done all day is eat.
Really?
I'm crazy about Mexican food.
What have you
I ate some ants' eggs at lunchtime.
Oh, you did?
I did.
How did you find them?
Delicious.
Really? That's a
And
gourmet thing.
Some black mole, which was really good.
Very good.
And of course, cabrito. I tried for the first
Where
time.
were you? You remember?
I went to a wonderful restaurant downtown with my publishers. It was absolutely delicious.
And downtown is beautiful.
Yeah.
How did you find downtown?
We saw the Tile House, which is wonderful architecture, and the post office, and some of the main buildings. Yeah, it was really, really beautiful to be there.
Bellas Artes, have you been?
We only could go to the lobby today, unfortunately, because the museum was closed. But I could just see the Rivera murals above.
Yeah, you should go there. It's a beautiful place
Yeah,
inside
unfortunately,
also.
I'm only here for a very short time.
I know. And you were telling me you were here like 20 years ago.
Yeah, I came a long time ago when I was a student and I was traveling around Central America, but I didn't really recognize the city. When the plane landed, I couldn't believe how enormous Mexico is. Enormous,
huge.
enormous.
I know. And now with this new book, you've written 9 books before this one.
Right,
But
yes.
this is your first novel.
My first contemporary novel, yes.
Yeah. And very different from everything you've been working
Completely
before.
different, because really I'm a historian. I write quite boring history books. I specialize in the European Renaissance. Just to give an example, my last book was about the influence of Italian political thought on the emergence of the nation state in the 16th century. So
It has nothing to do with what I read
nothing to do with
this
No,
weekend.
No.
What would you say? Is this like an erotic thriller? Or
I
what
would
would you say?
I would describe it as a thriller.
It is a thriller.
I think it's a book for both men and women. I don't think it's just a woman's book. And really, it's a book that I wrote for myself. I wrote it for pleasure. And my only intention with it was to give people pleasure, to create something that people can really escape into.
And you had pleasure writing it, I suppose.
I had great fun writing it.
I want to know everything. You did a research because What do you think when they compare this to 50 Shades of Grey? I just think it's very different. I mean,
Well,
I had the chance to interview the writer of 50
Yes,
Shades.
Erica,
And
yeah.
Erica, yeah. And I think it's very completely
Well,
different.
I think that 50 Shades is basically a love story.
It is a love.
It's a
It's a
Cinderella
romantic,
story.
yeah, it
It's
is.
almost like a fairy story. This book is not a love story. And in fact, in England, one journalist compared it to 50 Shades of Grey. And now the internet is full of really angry women who bought it and absolutely hated it. Some of my best reviews have been from people who absolutely loved 50 Shades of Grey. I think my favourite was, if I hadn't bought this book on Kindle, I would burn it. This book is an insult to E.L. James. So if you want a love story, don't buy this book.
Yeah, no.
But if you want a story that's going to make you keep turning the pages long past your bedtime, this is for you.
It is, yeah. That's what happened to me, yeah. I mean, I read it in a couple of hours this weekend, and I enjoyed it very much, but I thought it has nothing to do with 50 Shades.
It doesn't.
And it just has like some certain strokes of erotic, no passages. I mean,
It's a sexy book, and the heroine likes sex. She's very unapologetic about her own desires, about her own body, but the sex also forms part of the plot. Part of the thriller narrative is because of the heroine's particular tastes and the way she chooses to satisfy them. So it's very much integrated into the story.
and it's just about sex. There's nothing of love in there. I mean, she just likes sex.
Well, the heroine, Judith Rashley, is, I suppose you could say, quite sociopathic.
Is she? Yeah.
I think so.
She is, yeah.
I think she is. She doesn't have a very profound emotional life. But then, you know, neither does James Bond. No one asks James Bond about how he feels all the time. And I think that women in literature are often confined by rather old-fashioned expectations. I think women are still meant to feel things emotionally, sentimentally, romantically.
You expect women to feel that way.
And I wanted to write about a woman who is transgressive, who dares to be different, and who doesn't apologise for what she is or what she wants.
When you start reading this book, you never expect the heroine to be the way she is.
Well,
she turns out to be.
She starts off as a very nice girl.
Yeah,
she's hardworking, she's intelligent, she's ambitious. She tries really hard in her job at the auction house, and she really thinks that if she just believes in it enough, you know, it's all going to be right. And when that doesn't work, she decides to see how things go if she does it the wrong way. And that turns out to be much more interesting.
For her, it's a lot much interesting.
Not so much for the people she meets.
No.
that can end very badly.
No. They end dead.
Quite a lot of them do end up dead,
yeah.
yes. That is unfortunate.
What happens to her? I mean, you planned her to be that way, or she just turns out to be that way?
I knew when I started writing it that there was going to be a central murder scene. I didn't realise that there'd be quite such a high body count at the end of the book. But Judith doesn't kill for pleasure, and the book is not violent for the sake of violence.
Why does she kill? She kills
because she's ruthless. She kills people who get in her way. And she's got a very clear idea of where she wants to go, and nothing is going to stop her.
She says that she's angry, very angry, like...
She's angry because I think she's 25 years old when the book begins, and I think she speaks for a lot of young people of her generation, particularly women. They've all been sold this idea that if you work hard enough, if you believe in yourself, if you try hard enough, you're going to make it.
It's not enough.
And especially for this generation of young people, the millennials, who've suffered the consequences of the economic irresponsibility of their elders, that is simply not true. So her anger is towards the world. It's about how she feels that the world is very unfair, and she decides to use the prejudices of that world as weapons and turn them against those who perpetrate this injustice.
And the story they told them, it's very romantic.
Absolutely. No? This is an anti-romance novel.
Absolutely.
It's anti-romance in every sense of the word.
Okay, it's very sexy, and I said it has strokes of erotic and almost porn, maybe. No, a little bit of porn, you would say, or no?
I I'm not against porn, but I think that the purpose of pornography is very simple. It aims at sexual arousal. I wanted to write about the things that grown-ups do in the words that grown-ups use. And I also think that we have undergone a seismic shift, you could even say a revolution in the last 10 years because of the internet, in the way that people talk about sex, in the way that people approach sex, in the words that they use to describe it. And so I wanted to write in a way which, to me, felt very realistic and modern and honest. I mean, I'm surprised that some people have found the way that sex is described shocking, because right now, as we are speaking, there are millions of women online, on Tinder, you know, looking for hookups, casual encounters.
And the sexting also.
And sexting, you know, the vocabulary people use is pretty to the point. It's pretty extreme. So I don't think there's anything...
We don't like to recognize it.
I don't think there's anything in this book which millions of people are not saying online or on their phones 24 hours a day. It's just quite unusual to see it in literature, I suppose.
You had to do a research, I guess, because I was
did.
asking you, these places really exist?
Well, you know, a lot of the action in the book...
I mean, London, I know it's like...
it's got a dark side. It's got a dark side. Well, a lot of the action in the book is centred around Judith's taste for sex parties. And I'd never been to a sex party, so I thought I'd better go, because the idea I had, I suppose, was quite prejudiced, quite old-fashioned.
Like we all do.
Like we all do. I imagined it would be, you know, sleazy and tacky, with the women, you know, dressed in a very vulgar way. So I got a male friend to volunteer, because you can only go to this place in Paris. You have to be a couple. So
you have to be a couple.
And I went to a very famous and exclusive and indeed expensive sex club in Paris.
Yeah, you said like 1,000 euros.
Oh, it's very expensive. And I I was very surprised.
What's the name of this
I
book?
can't say the name.
I
can't say. I might want to go back, you know.
But we also want to go just to know what it looks like.
Well, put it this way, I'm not the only person to have been there. A certain famous French politician used to frequent it. There's your clue. So I'd expected it to be this way, and actually it was very elegant. If you didn't know what was happening in the back room behind the scenes,
in the private,
you would think you were in any elegant bar in any big city in the world. The people were well dressed, they were very attractive, the atmosphere was very civilized, very pleasant. It was really very convivial. And what interested me most, actually, was the way that all the action was directed by the women. It was all about women's pleasure. What
they chose.
They chose, they said yes or no, they did what they wanted, and it felt to me very celebratory of women. It didn't feel in any way demeaning to women at all, quite the opposite.
Not the object, no?
Not at all.
We're used to
Not
it,
at
like
all.
the women as objects.
And it was absolutely not like the something else I did when I was writing the book was I looked at a lot of porn online, which again I'm not that sort of person really, and I was pretty horrified by what I saw, not by what the people were doing, but by how little pleasure the women seemed to be having in it. And on the contrary, in this place in Paris, it was very much about female pleasure and about women being in an atmosphere that was liberated enough for them to enjoy their physicality in an unself-conscious way. And I thought that was rather wonderful.
You were just there once?
I just went the once, yes.
Really?
Yes, it was quite a comprehensive evening. Once was enough.
Were you in the... did you took part of something?
I observed, let us say.
Who was your male partner? Because you're a married woman, no?
No, I'm divorced. I have a serious boyfriend, but no, I took a platonic friend.
But you've been married like for 3 times?
Well, I don't really count the first one. That could have happened to anyone.
That's what I always say, because I've been married twice, and I always say the first one doesn't count.
It's an accident.
I know.
It can happen to anyone.
Yeah, I know. And you have one child, no?
I have one daughter. She's 10.
One daughter.
Yes.
She's 10. Okay, so, and the only place you visited that kind of places was Paris, not in London?
No, the only place I visited was in Paris, but in London,
There are many places like
well,
that,
there's a scene called Killing Kittens, which is run by, of all people, one of the close friends of the Duchess of Cambridge. And she has set herself up running very exclusive sex parties. So again, as part of the research for the book, I signed up for their website and received invitations and looked at their secret website, and you can see what goes on and, you know, who goes and where the parties are held. And again, it's all in very nice locations. They have them in country houses, in penthouses in Mayfair. They have different themes.
Mayfair, which is like the very
There's even different
nice
age groups. They have something called the Silver Kittens, which is for the over 40s,
okay,
which is depressing.
Yeah, I would belong there.
Yeah, I wasn't too happy about that. So that's a scene in London, and yeah, I mean, I was certainly surprised to learn how popular it is and how normal it is. It's not some kind of strange, fetishistic secret world. It's just normal people who like doing this thing.
There are two things that I would say that runs the world. No, sex and politics, maybe.
Power.
Power. No?
I would say power.
Sex
yes.
and power.
And that's really what Maestra's about.
Yeah, I know, exactly. An art here, which I say, well, actually, the cover is very erotic.
Yeah,
no? It looks like Anish Kapoor's. It's not a painting, sculpture from Anish Kapoor.
It was also meant to suggest the Italian painter Fontana. We played a lot with Fontana's imagery because one of the first things that Judith buys for herself when she becomes an art dealer is a Fontana.
Yeah, exactly. Now, something I want to ask you: why you never describe Judith? I mean.
No, you don't know what she looks like.
No.
Something that was very interesting.
She looks like you? Like
No, I don't know what she looks like. I
mean, I imagine her very beautiful, no?
Well, there was a reason I didn't want to describe her. First of all, because I didn't want to be prescriptive. She's a sexy character. She owns her own desires. But I didn't want to say to readers, well, to be sexy, you have to have this hair or this body. I wanted each reader to have their own, his or her image of Judith. What was very interesting, my publishers in New York organised a reading group. There were about 70 readers. And I asked them, what does Judith look like? And about 5 people raised their hands, and they all told me very detailed descriptions of her appearance, all completely different. And I said, no, there's no description. And they started arguing with me, and they were trying to show me in my own book, but no, you said. And of course, they couldn't find the description.
No,
so
there's no description.
I was delighted, because it meant that they'd done exactly what I wanted, which is imagine. And I think women's bodies are so policed. You know, we're constantly bombarded with, you know, we have to have thinner thighs, we have to have a higher butt, we have to have bigger breasts, we have to have this hair, this skin. And I wanted people to feel liberated. You can imagine Judith any way you want to. Also, I thought it made her a bit more scary, because if you don't know what she looks like, she might be sitting next to you right now.
Hi. Well, you're right.
Yes.
Because you never know how she looks like. You never know how she is.
No. So I think that added to her mystique.
Now, this is the first part of a trilogy.
That's right, it's the first part of a trilogy. It's an ongoing serial.
Is it done? I mean, is it completed, the trilogy?
I've written the end of book 3, and book 2 is finished. That's coming out in spring next year. So I've got book 3 to do, but I know how it ends. So it's not more of the same. It's the continuing trajectory of her life. Lots of the characters come back. It's a bit like there's a character in the book who's the concierge of her flat in Paris, who's always watching a telenovela. She spends her life watching a telenovela.
Brazilian.
She's Brazilian. She watches the Portuguese telenovela.
Yeah.
And I suppose in a way, the book or the story has some of those characteristics. It's dramatic. It's got the same characters recurring, and there's lots of twists in the plot.
I loved when she says, because somebody asked her, finally we knew he's a police, but no. when he asks, why are you doing this? Why do you kill people? And she says, this story about her. No?
Yes, the traumatic
the childhood,
past,
the traumatic.
yes.
Yeah.
And then she starts laughing.
Said, come on.
Well, again, because this is something that I think restricts.
I love that passage. I mean, I think it's wonderful.
The Americans made me take it out. No, you can't tell jokes about child abuse in America. It's not allowed. But again, I think that's something that restricts women on the page, because women are expected to provide moral reasons even for immorality. We have to be good even when we're being bad. And you're only allowed to be transgressive. You're only allowed to break the rules if you've been traumatized, if you're a poor little wounded soul and you can't help yourself. That's okay. Then you,
because you have a terrible
you're allowed to be
childhood.
bad. Yeah. But if you want to be bad in a way that a man's bad, you know, that's not allowed. So again, that was another rule that I wanted to break and to play with.
Well, you did it great.
Thank you.
You did it great.
Thank you.
How are the critics? I mean, how do you find them? We were talking about that a little bit
before.
It's a book
that produces very strong reactions. People either really love it or really hate it. So I've had some really outstanding, amazing reviews, and I've had some real shockers. But maybe that's good. I think that if you're a writer, one of your jobs is to annoy people. If you're not making someone angry, you're not working hard enough. And I think that anything which encourages people to talk about books, to have conversations about books, to read, to disagree, to engage, can only be a good thing. So I don't mind if people hate my book. That's
now, this
fine.
has been a very great seller,
I've been very lucky. It's done very well.
In Europe, no?
It's been #1 in a lot of countries, and it's
translated to how many languages?
It's been sold in 42 countries, so that's quite a lot of territories.
And you've been touring?
I've been living in the airport since last September.
When did you write this? Because I think it was written
I wrote it 2 years ago.
2 years ago, and nobody wanted to publish it.
Nobody wanted it. I couldn't even. I actually truly.
Why? I mean,
I could not give it away.
Your publishers?
Well, my agent. She's my ex-agent now.
Well, yes.
My agent said it was disgusting, and she wanted nothing to do with it.
When she read it?
And then I sent it to my regular publisher and said, I don't want any money. You can have it as a present. I think maybe it might be a bit commercial, a bit more commercial than other things I've done. And he refused to speak to me about it. And I was absolutely desperate. I tried to get someone. Nobody wanted it. And in the end, I was thinking of publishing it myself online. And then a friend of mine who owns a restaurant in London, she had the manuscript. And one evening, quite a famous publisher came in. He's the guy who discovered Stieg Larsson, you know, who wrote the Millennium Sequence. And of course, in England, Stieg Larsson's books were rejected by 17 publishers. So this guy came in to have his dinner, and my friend put the manuscript on his plate and said, you can't have any food until you start reading. Anyway, the next morning, very early, she went to open up the restaurant, and there he was standing outside on the pavement. And he'd finished the book overnight, and he wanted to meet the writer. And then 6 weeks later, I was on a plane to Hollywood. So the fairy tale is not in the book. The fairy tale is
in your life.
Is how it happened.
Yeah. Now, what do you think of this being a movie? Because then again, it's not always the right thing to do. It doesn't always turn out to be as a success as the book.
Well, I think I've been really...
Like 50 Shades, I mean.
I think I've been really lucky. The book was bought in 7 days in Hollywood, and there was an auction between 4 different studios. And in the end, I didn't choose the one that offered the most money. I offered the one who I thought was the best producer, and that's Amy Pascal, who is an extraordinary woman, obviously has achieved an amazing amount in her Hollywood career. And we had a long conversation about the book. She'd read it very thoroughly, and I thought, yeah, this is the right person to have it. And then she's engaged Erin Cressida-Wilson, who was the author of Secretary, and she's just finished the adaptation of The Girl on the Train. And again, Erin is a fantastic writer. She's, you know, very, very feminist. She really gets strong women. And so I find myself working with this team of amazing women to bring the book to the screen. So I feel very fortunate and very confident.
You're going to be involved in the...
not in the screenplay,
Not
no.
in the screenplay.
The script is already finished.
Okay.
And,
You liked it?
I've had quite a lot of conversations with Erin early on about what was going to be done, but I feel she's a professional, not me. She's the screenwriter. It's her job, not mine. My role is to collaborate. So we're at this...
But did you have a say-so? Or...
I did, but I didn't really exercise
didn't
it,
want
to be honest. No,
Okay.
because I felt that it's very... I think it's a bit like if you're a painter, you can't necessarily be a good sculptor. And if you can write books, it doesn't mean you've got an eye for screenplays. And I just
Like
thought...
she would know better, no?
Yeah, I just thought, leave it to the professionals.
Okay,
you know?
okay. Now, the actors, I mean, all the...
Well, I would like to have someone really unknown play Judith. Someone who nobody recognised at all, so that all the readers see is the character. But
what do they think in Hollywood about that? I
well,
mean,
we've had some interesting names. But for the
known or unknown?
unknown names, but for the men, for the lovers and the victims, big names.
Like?
Because, well, if you're George Clooney or Brad Pitt, what do you never get to do? Die.
See, no.
I would like to watch Brad Pitt die.
Dying.
Yes,
yeah.
horribly.
By Judith.
Horribly. So I think it'll be really fun to have all these big male Hollywood stars, and at the end, the last one standing is the little unknown woman.
Wow.
Wouldn't that be great?
Great.
So,
and
well,
how are you doing with that?
I think Amy's persuaded.
Who?
We'll have to see what the studio says. You know,
Aye,
it's,
wow.
Yeah, and we'll have to see if Brad Pitt's willing to die in a horrible way. Maybe he won't be.
Who would he be? The first one?
Well, I would really like George Clooney to play Renaud because he'd have to be fat. But of course, the really fun casting is actually for Jan, the Norwegian sea captain.
Yeah, Jan.
Because
wow.
what the real fun sex scene is the sex scene on the tender of the boat in Portofino when they eat the raw sea urchins. And
How do you say those in English?
Sea urchins.
The sea urchins,
And
exactly.
and I really had fun with that scene.
when
It's
you-
like full on Mills and Boon romance. You know, the waves are crashing, the violins are playing, and my Norwegian publishers were so pleased that he's Norwegian that they're having a Mr. Maestra competition, and readers have to send in photographs of the actor who they think should play Jan, the Norwegian sea captain.
Wow.
And the one I
He
found...
has to be very good
He's going to be really
looking.
hot.
Yeah,
he's going to be
very
really hot. Well, I fancy Alexander Skarsgård, who was in True Blood. He played the vampire in True Blood. And he's just coming out in Tarzan. I saw the poster here in Mexico City. He's really hot.
He's really hot.
He's really hot, yeah.
Antonio Banderas, maybe someone, no?
I think
He's very Latin, you think?
I think if we were going to have a Latino actor, we'd have to go for someone a bit younger. I'm sorry to say that. I think Antonio might be a bit over the hill.
Yeah, maybe. You're
I mean,
right.
it'd be hard work for him to dive down for the sea urchins.
Yeah.
He'd have to have a body double. But maybe you could suggest a really hot Latino actor.
Let me think.
Have a think and come back to that. I want to know who would be the Latino choice.
Yeah. I will let you know. Now, fashion plays a very...
It's a very important part of the book.
role. Yeah. Are you pretty much into fashion? Well, you lived in Milan, no?
I lived in Milan, and many years ago, I was a very...
What are you wearing? You're wearing...
OK, so this is equipment. The jeans are Saint Laurent. The shoes are Charlotte Olympia.
no, you're
so not bad.
very much into not bad.
No, it's all I do.
I'm wearing my Jimmy Choos because I said if I'm coming to you,
I noticed your Jimmy Choos. But I think we need to see the Jimmy Choo.
Here
Can
are
we
the Jimmy Choos.
look at those Jimmy Choos?
They're nice,
They're
no?
fabulous.
They're fabulous.
Fashion, I think all women, whether we like it or not, we communicate by our clothes. Even if you're anti-fashion, you're still communicating
You still
your message.
communicate, of course.
And we all stand in front of our wardrobes every morning and think, who do I have to be today? Who do I want to be today?
What am I wearing?
And I think we all project fantasies onto clothes. I mean, we read fashion magazines, we go to the shops, and we think, when I have these shoes, I'll be this person. In this dress, I will be this person. I think the best example is our wedding dresses, you know? when we wear our wedding dress, we're a princess for the day. It's the dress that makes our dreams come true. And I think we all have
That's
that.
what we think, at least.
Well, that's what we hope, you know. Optimism over experience there. But I think we all we want to dress the right way for our job. You know, we want to wear the right suit. We want to project the right image. I think we all feel like that. And I think it's also a pleasure. I think dressing up is a pleasure. And
Guilty pleasure, you think?
no, I think it's a pleasure that women are made to feel guilty about, and we shouldn't be made to feel guilty about it. Men aren't made to feel guilty about liking expensive cars or
Watches.
expensive watches or, I don't know, golf clubs. But somehow women are meant to feel that clothes are frivolous. And I think it was the very intellectual English writer, Virginia Woolf, who said that there is nothing more important than clothes. And I totally agree. But I also think that clothes play a particular role in the book because Judith is a chameleon. The way she survives, the way she succeeds is by changing herself all the time.
And she struggles.
She uses her brain, she uses her intelligence, and she also uses her clothes. They're a form of disguise, and they change a lot through the book. And also because she's...
Because it depends what is she doing.
Exactly, and also how she develops as an individual.
And how she
Also,
evolves and how she...
she's 25, and she's from a generation who've really absorbed the idea of the brand. I mean, to say that they have internalized commodity fetishism would not be an exaggeration. For people who are 25, brands are a whole language. And so for Judith, it's quite natural for her to think in terms of brands. And again, this was something I hope that would make the character modern and realistic.
How do 25-year-old girls, how do they dress? I mean, do they dress with brands? Do they?
I think they...
Because they're expensive.
I think they do. I think they're much more aspirational than I was at that age. For example, my
We didn't used to wear
my
them.
boyfriend has a 15-year-old daughter, and we were on holiday recently. She said, "I like your jacket. Where did you get it?" And I said, "Oh, it's from Isabelle Marant." And she's like, "Oh, yeah, so are my trousers." Really? I mean,
At 15 years old?
when
We
I was
didn't use those.
When I was
didn't we?
15, I just about heard of Levi 501s.
Levi's,
I thought that was really cool. But I think with the internet, with Instagram, with Snapchat,
Pinterest,
and also with the crossover between music, fashion, and brands, it's much more coherent. It's much more homogeneous, and so I think that very young girls are very brand aware. And I'm not offering a judgment on that. I'm just saying this is how it is, and I'm putting it in the book in the same way as with the sex. I'm not saying this is good or this is bad. I'm just saying this is a real thing. So literature should reflect that.
do you judge Judith? I mean, does she...
Well, I really like Judith. I mean, she's like
me too.
she's like my evil best friend.
Yeah, I know. But why do we like Judith if she's a murderer?
Well, I think she's really funny.
she's
really
very
funny.
intelligent.
And she doesn't take any shit.
She doesn't.
I
take
like
any
that.
shit, yeah.
And also, she's actually quite nice in some ways, despite being a murderer.
Or maybe because of that.
She's very loyal to her friends, and she's capable of being very kind.
Like with David, no?
With Dave, and she's very generous. She's even nice to the concierge. And I think she's also very lucid. She sees the world very clearly. She's not a snob. She wants to be in the world of rich people because her only emotional reaction is to beauty. And she's come from a very poor background, but she's not a snob. She doesn't look down on people who've got less than her. She doesn't look down on people who are being poor. She only despises people who are unkind or cruel, which I think is an interesting distinction. So I think she has many likeable qualities. She also has excellent taste in shoes. Very important.
Yeah, very important. She has something of you, no? Necessarily. I mean...
I think so. I mean, I gave her the same birthplace as me, and
she likes maybe the same places you like the Reeds or the...
A lot of the places that are in the book, the locations, are places I've known. I lived in Paris for a long time. I spent a lot of time in Italy. But I also chose those places because they resonate with glamour, and I think even... if you haven't been to Paris, you have an idea of Paris, or you have an idea of the Italian Riviera or the Ritz Hotel in London. One thing I wanted to do with the book was to give people the chance to escape. When I was a teenager, I loved reading, in English we call them bonkbusters.
Which are?
Sex and shopping novels. You know, like Shirley Conran Lace. I loved those when I was a teenager because I grew up in a really boring town in the north of England, and
that makes you dream. And
reading these books, you know, these fabulously bitchy women who change their lovers as often as they change their Versace jackets. Not that I even knew how to pronounce Versace, but still. And they were always set in these places like Gstaad. And I thought, you know, one day I'm going to go to Gstaad, one day I'm going to go to the French Riviera. And they made me dream. And I think books should be fun. Books should be pleasurable, and they should be something you can escape into. And so I chose those locations partly because I knew them, but also because I wanted to give that same sense of escapism and pleasure to the readers.
Now, does Judith really enjoy sex?
I think she does. I think she does, yeah. I think she's not above using it practically when the circumstances require, because she sees her body as one more weapon in her arsenal. Her most important weapon is certainly her brain, but if her body is necessary, she will use it, and she doesn't feel troubled about that.
There's no guilt in her about that.
And she's very capable of detaching her herself from her body, but she also enjoys her body in every way. But she doesn't just enjoy sex. I mean, there's a lot of food in the novel. She likes to eat. She's very sensual. She's very alert to scent, to the feeling of things. She likes beauty. She likes smells. I mean, she's very visual. Every aspect of sensuality. And of course, one of the most important themes in the book is art and her love of art, her love of beauty, but also what art can tell us about the relationship between women and violence.
Do you collect any art? Are you pretty much into the art world?
I can't afford to collect anything I'd like.
You'll be able.
I trained in an auction house, and I studied history of art, and in my historian career, I've written a great deal about classical art, so it's always been a great passion of mine.
Not contemporary, not modern art, the same as Judith.
20th century interests me. Contemporary less, on the whole. I do go to things like the Venice Biennale, but not for pleasure. But
were you there for research also?
Yeah, I was there for research last year. But the painter who Judith is most focused on in this book, which is Artemisia Gentileschi, also has a really interesting true life story. She was a very talented painter in the workshop of her father, Orazio Gentileschi, who was a contemporary of Caravaggio's in Rome. And she was raped by one of her father's apprentices when she was a teenager.
That I learned from your book, yeah.
And she was brave enough at the time to take him to court. And in order to prove the veracity of her testimony, she had to be tortured. And the torture used was thumb screws on her hands. So not only was she prepared to submit to appalling physical pain and to social disgrace, but of course she was prepared to risk her livelihood, risk her hands, her painter's hands. And she won. And I think there's something extraordinarily inspiring about her courage. A lot of feminist art critics see in Artemisia's paintings a theory of violence, of revenge. I don't see that. I see something else. I see a very practical relationship with violence. And in the picture that's most important in the book, Judith and Holofernes, Judith is actually sawing his head off in the right way.
How does she know all that?
Well, the reason is
she read.
Well, I think she's studied the paintings, and if you look at the real one, the one that hangs in the Uffizi in Florence, there's hundreds of representations of this biblical subject, and they're nearly all by men, and in nearly all of them the sword's in the wrong place. And what I love about Artemisia is she shows a woman getting to work. You know, she might be pulling the skin off a rabbit in the kitchen or pulling the guts out of a chicken. She's got the sword in there and you can see the muscles in her arm. This is a job, you know, and she's getting... It's
hard work.
It's hard work and she's getting on with it. And I thought that was so interesting because it made me think, how do women see violence differently than men? How do women commit violence differently than men? Clearly women are capable of it, but how do we go about it? And that was something else I wanted to discuss in the novel.
And then she never feels guilty of the murders.
No.
Not till now. I mean,
no, guilt doesn't really register
there's a
with her.
sentence where they ask her, well, why do you do it? And she answers, because I can.
Because I can. Yeah, that's a good answer. I think James Bond would go with that answer. Yeah,
Because I can.
Because I can, because I'm capable of it.
And I know how to do it. She's very
Yeah.
good at it.
Well, I did a lot of research for the murders as well. I looked up a lot of medical research. For,
You can
know.
tell because she thinks about everything.
Yeah, but it's also how do you actually murder someone with a weapon you can buy in a tourist gift shop? That's a challenge. And that was really fun.
How does she know? I mean,
Well, there's a careful clue at the beginning of the book. Her
When she-
flatmates are
when
medical
she
students. She spent 2 years living with the medical students and reading their textbooks. So that's how she knows.
and then she reads all the thrillers from Dave.
Then she
also,
reads
no?
the true life murder thrillers from Dave as
from
well.
Dave.
Yes.
Now, are you a feminist? I mean, you are definitely a feminist. Maybe you don't belong to an...
I am absolutely a feminist.
Yeah, of course.
What I think is, well, I think what's sad about a lot of contemporary feminism is it seems to be about making rules. This is feminist, this is not. There's a right way to be a feminist and a wrong way to be a feminist. And I don't know what's the case in Mexico, but certainly...
There's an stigma, no? With-
In the British press, there's certainly an idea that you have to behave in a certain way to be a feminist. And it seems to me that there's a lot of time spent on really trivial issues. It seems to me that feminism has some really massive problems to solve. There are 496 million women in the world who still can't read. That seems to me to be much more important than the size of Lena Dunham's arse. You know, I actually don't really care about Lena Dunham's arse or how she feels about it or how it's photographed or if it's retouched or not. I don't care. I care quite a lot about women who don't have the vote, who don't have access to medical care, who are, you know, forced into all sorts of indignities because of their sex. So I think that feminism is about big questions. It's not about your shoes. It's not about your hair. It's not about what you like doing in the bedroom. Feminism is about women being powerful. That was a strong answer, right?
Yeah, no, but you're absolutely right. Empowering women, no? That's
in every
absolutely
way. And
right.
I think women need to feel unashamed of themselves and also of their ambitions. They need to feel that they can ask for things, that they can...
What's going on with women in England, for example? No, it's very different, like in those countries in Europe.
It seems that there's a really contradictory discourse in the Anglo-Saxon world, because on the one hand you have women are wealthier and more powerful than ever before. It's possible that we may see the first woman president of the United States, and yet at the same time...
Do you like her?
Hillary. I think she's the best of a very bad job.
Well, yes.
And conversely, at the same time, we have a discourse which is obsessed with women being weak, women being obsessed with being raped, you know, students in elite universities being unable to read certain classical texts because it might make them upset. I find this absurd, and I think it's demeaning to women to suggest that we're actually, you know, feminism is not about getting upset if somebody whistles at you in the street. I mean, there are worse things that can happen to you.
That's very trivial. That's the very everyday thing.
I think it's deeply trivial, and I think it's very patronising to women to suggest that there's a parity of victimisation. You know I'm a very privileged woman, and I don't take that privilege for granted.
But you've always been? I mean, you were educated, you've always been a privileged woman, and you have...
Well, I have the vote.
I
have a bank account, and I have all sorts of things that millions of women in the world don't have. So, I think feminism.
And you choose who to marry, and you choose who to stay with, and you choose when to divorce, and you choose.
And you know, I can have sex if I want to, and not if I don't. I think this is just a personal view. It seems to me that feminism has a lot of big problems to solve, and would do much better if it were not mired in triviality. But I don't know, I think maybe for women in Mexico, the issues of ambition and independence are very important.
And it's very difficult. I mean, there are a lot of girls and women who are not educated. They don't have access to that. They don't have access to medical services because because of being women.
Yes.
You know
so
what I mean?
I think that
it's a gender thing.
feminism maybe means a different thing in Mexico than perhaps it does in England at the moment. I hope that will change.
Yeah, me too. And is there in England, for example, or in Europe, a stigma about being a feminist still?
In certain elements of the press, yes. I mean, it's still seen as a dirty word, but look, anything that Donald Trump has a problem with is fine by me. That's okay.
That's okay.
I can live with Donald Trump disliking
the better.
me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, of course, the more the better.
Donald Trump dislikes me, the better.
The better.
That's fabulous.
Of course,
no,
of course.
So I am very, very proud to be a feminist, and I think this is, in many ways, a feminist book because I think it's about a woman who is, she's not ashamed of herself. She's extremely ambitious. She uses her brain. And she is fearless. I'm not recommending it as, how to get on in the art world guide for the ambitious young woman, but I think it's got a lot of feminist elements to it. Equally, I think it's quite a man's book. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. Of course, it is.
I know a lot of guys who've really enjoyed it, and I think that men will hopefully enjoy it too.
Now, why they didn't want to publish it? They thought it was not a good book, or because of all these things we're talking about?
I think it frightened them. All the publishers who rejected it were male, of a certain age. And I think it gave them a fright.
The silver age?
The silver age. They were silvery publishers. And I think also because Judith is she's quite merciless about men. Well, no, she's actually quite nice because she has sex with some ugly ones and enjoys it.
Most of them are ugly, except Jan, maybe.
She's not a lookist.
She has something with fat guys, actually.
She's always getting stuck with fat guys.
Yeah.
But she's very, very clear-eyed. She laughs at men quite a lot. And she tells jokes about their penises.
Yeah.
Can't do that. And
if they big or not, if they thin or thick.
What kind of personality they have. Yeah, I mean, you just can't say that.
Yeah.
And I think a very interesting example is when the book was just acquired in England, it was at the London Book Fair, and I had an interview with a very famous American publisher who said, I'd really like to publish your book, but you'll have to tone down the sex scenes. I said, why? He said, because they're filthy. And I said, well, 20 years ago, you published a book in which a man pours acid into a woman's vagina, fills it with melted cheese, and releases a rat up there. And you're telling me that my sex scenes are disgusting. What is this?
Yeah.
Why is it that the idea of a woman enjoying her own body should be so shocking? Because you can do, and this I think is a big paradox in contemporary literature, in crime fiction, you can do appalling things to women's bodies. You can skin them alive, you can cut out their tongues, you can subject them to
the
most disgusting tortures. And nobody bats an eyelid. But to show a woman actually just enjoying her own body consensually, that is still seen as shocking. Now, I do not understand that.
That's very shocking.
I find that appalling. So I think that for the silver publisher, there was a lot to make him nervous. But again, I think perhaps it will make some men nervous. Perhaps it will
But of course you said, no, I'm not going to take them
I said, I'm not censoring a word, and I didn't. Apart from the dirty joke about paedophilia, which the Americans wouldn't allow, and they would not budge on that. But apart from that,
you can buy it, no?
Yeah, get round it. We can smuggle Spanish editions over the border to correct the Americans. But yeah, I think for men, I mean, it's got boats, it's got guns, it's got planes, it's got some quite expensive watches, it's got sex, it's got the mafia,
and men love sex. I mean,
they like some sex and they like the mafia, and there's, it's got something for everyone.
And they like this kind of sex also, no? I mean, they're pretty much into it. I mean, I don't know if they participate, but they like watching and reading.
I think maybe they might enjoy this kind of sex more in their imagination. I think they might be a bit scared if they had to join in. Certainly in the sex club in Paris, the
women are, they're mainly women?
Well, there were men because it's a place for couples, but the standard of men was quite high. There weren't so many old fat blokes in the sex club in Paris, really. So I think maybe it's best left to the imagination for the silver gentleman.
So you think sex runs the world, or what?
Well, we said earlier, didn't we? Sex and power.
I truly believe it.
I think what's interesting is that the dynamic between sex and power is changing for women, because for hundreds of years, sex was pretty much the only power that women had. And with my historian hat on, I mean, that's something I've written about extensively, that for example, if you talk about 17th century Versailles or 18th century London, sex or being the mistress of a powerful man or being the wife of a powerful man was the only access women had to any form of power. I think what's very interesting about women now is that that access has shifted, and as women become economically and politically more powerful, the way that they view sex is changing too.
Now, tell me something. I don't want you, of course, to tell me how does Judith end. But there's a word almost at the end of the book where she says, "Well, Judge."
Oh, yes. The thing is, Your Honor, the gun just jumped into my hand. You'll have to see.
So that made me think that she's...
Well, I can't
She was caught?
No, I can't say she gets caught, but I can tell you that there is one thing in the book which she overlooks. There's one thing in book 1 which is not where it should be, and that leads into book 2.
Hey, I have to read it again.
But yeah, the end, I think, will be, I hope the end will be surprising. I hope so. I hope Judith will carry on surprising her readers right up to the very last page of book 3.
Now, do you enjoy sex? And do you have any problem admitting publicly that you enjoy sex?
Well, you know, for one of my history books, I interviewed a group of 70-year-old French women who'd all been the girlfriend of a very famous French politician called Gaston Palevski. And one of them said, you know, I'll translate from the French, "I am 72 years old, I find myself very attractive, and I am ready for love."
Oh, wow.
And I think that's an admirable attitude. So,
But love is not the same as sex,
well,
because then again...
I think she was meaning love in the French
sex
sense.
is- yeah.
Prête pour l'amour,
okay,
you know,
okay.
ready to do it. Yeah, I don't think there's anything shameful in admitting that you like sex. Why would there be? You know, why would you feel guilty about that?
Because that's the way they taught us to feel and to think and to...
I also like cream cakes and, you know, reading trashy celebrity magazines. I don't feel guilty about that either.
How did you feel about 50 Shades of Grey? Did you read it all, the
I read
trilogy?
it because I was reviewing it. I read the first book.
Ah, okay.
I think it's a certain kind of product, and it was obviously very, very successful. But I don't think 50 Shades is really about sex. It's about...
Yeah, neither do I. I told her, it's a love story.
It's about
a
a
romantic...
fantasy of she changes her man. You know, he starts off in book 1, you know, the distant, emotionally twisted, impossible
Fucked up
billionaire. And by the end of book 3, as I understand, he's a suburban dad. Now... To me, that seems a fairly sorry ambition, but apparently a lot of women share it. I mean, not my idea of fun, but I think the idea of changing your man...
Your idea of man in the first book? Christian
Yes.
Grey? Yes, no?
I always thought he was a bit weedy. And also, a bit,
sort of.
if I may be frank, an unsophisticated person's idea of sophistication.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all that business with, you know, the terribly fine wine, it's all a bit naff, isn't it, really? I think that,
Yeah, a
you
little
know,
bit too much.
Yeah, I think what you really want is, you know, a fuck and a hamburger, and that's fine. Oh my God! I said that word.
The F word.
Can we bleep that out?
No, we
No, but I don't want to
censor you.
shock the people of Mexico.
With the F
no,
word.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
we're
sorry.
very used to this.
English people are always swearing. I'm really sorry.
No, Mexicans do, and me
okay,
too. So
okay.
don't worry. And this is a late night show, so there's
good.
no problem.
Okay,
Very
okay.
good, very good. Now, are you going to keep writing about history? What are you going to do? Are you going to focus on this?
When this series is finished, I want to do something completely different. I've got the chance of doing a translation of Émile Zola's novel Nana.
Wow.
More sex, I suppose. But I also had, before all this happened with this book, I was going to write a book about the 17th century English writer and architect, Sir John Vanbrugh, who introduced the Baroque style to England. And actually today I was learning, when I was going about in Mexico City, about the particular style of the Spanish Baroque. So I guess there's a small connection with Mexico there. So I think maybe I might just, I might do that. I think I also might have a rest.
Yeah, you've been working a lot. What does your boyfriend do? He's a writer as well?
He's a Danish tech entrepreneur. And he lives in Copenhagen and in Ibiza, which is where I'm going to spend my summer writing. And
Ibiza is Ibiza?
Yeah, Ibiza, yeah. And
the Spanish say Ibiza.
Ibiza,
yeah.
Which is where the beginning of book 2 is set, actually, on Ibiza.
Wow.
And he doesn't read very many books, which is very relaxing.
Wow.
So
Yeah, that's very relaxing. But he lives there.
He lives in Copenhagen and in Ibiza.
And you live in London.
In London, and then in the summer in Ibiza.
That's great.
Yeah,
no?
it's a good arrangement.
Yeah, it's a very good. Thank you so much. Congratulations.
It's been an absolute delight to be here. Thank you.
Me too. And I hope I'll see you again.
I hope so too, very
maybe
much.
in London soon. Maestra is the same title in English, right?
Yes,
Maestra.
exactly. The same title in every
because that's
language.
what she is. She's
She
a
is the
master.
maestra.
She is a maestra. Thank you so much.
It's been a delight. Thank you.
I'll see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Hay que comprar el libro, léalo. Yo lo leí de una sentada porque es muy entretenido de verdad y está muy bien escrito. Muchas gracias, como siempre, a usted por su atención y compañía. Yo soy Adela Micha y lo espero en una emisión más de la Entrevista por Adela. Hasta la próxima.